Morning live from southeastern Turkey. There's a desperate need for aid here in Turkey and also in Syria following the earthquake that's now known to have killed more than 21,000 people. This morning we're at a sports centre that's become a makeshift aid facility in Adiyaman, where tents have also been put up for the survivors. Anger from those who've lost loved ones over the time it's taken for aid to reach them is palpable here from the people we've been speaking to. The UK has revealed plans to build a field hospital and has sent thousands of thermal blankets to Turkey as international efforts step up. We'll be speaking to people throughout the programme, both those trying to deliver food and water here, of course, and also to these survivors. First, some breaking news for you, though, on the economy. And the UK has narrowly avoided a recession. Let's get more with Paul. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Kay. Yes, we've had the latest figures for GDP, economic output, how the economy is doing from the Office for National Statistics this morning. These are the monthly figures for December and, crucially, for those keeping the UK's economic scorecard, the quarterly figures for the end of last year. And while growth contracted, the economy shrank in December by 0.5%. Strikes and snow contributing to a very difficult month across the board in the economy. The quarterly figure showed flat growth, zero growth. It didn't grow, it didn't shrink. And that means the UK has, on the technical definition, avoided a recession. A recession is 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction, the economy getting smaller. While it shrank in the third quarter of 2022, it was flat in the final quarter of the year. So the UK isn't yet in recession, but there is not a lot of good economic news here, facing huge challenges across the board. The Chancellor with public sector strikes still raging, his own party calling for tax cuts, business desperate for incentives to start investing money in the UK. I'll be talking to him in the next hour to hear what he plans to do about it.
OK, let's return now to the earthquake that has, of course, hit Turkey and Syria, which is why we are here. The new development this morning is that the UK is sending medical aid and specialist equipment to Turkey. Thousands of thermal blankets have been sent overnight on an RAF transport plane. Further support will arrive in the coming days, which will include, amongst other things, a field hospital with a 24-hour operating theatre and a specialist critical care support team. More than 21,000 people now confirmed dead across Turkey and Syria, with tens of thousands badly hurt following the 7.8 magnitude quake and subsequent aftershocks. Just want to show you around where I am this morning. Let's start over here, should we? Nathan, watch that stick as you come past. This is one of the many soup stations. It's quite quiet at the moment. We've seen huge queues gathering here over the last couple of hours since we first arrived. It's a lentil soup. Obviously, many people here being vegetarian, and they often offer it to us. Of course, we are reluctant to accept that given the number of people that they're trying to help here in the tens of thousands. This is an aid hub that has been set up by the government. A lot of the stuff that is here, actually, if we move round, we can see a bus that has just arrived, a coach, and that is absolutely ram-packed with things like blankets and clothing and shoes. It's from Turkish people. A lot of the other aid hasn't yet arrived. The heavy digging equipment is coming in, but the aid hasn't yet arrived. So that is from donations from Turkish people who have been watching this unfold on television. Another soup station here as well. Let me tell you about the building behind. That is a sports hall. We will take you in there a little bit later on, but for now I just want to tell you what happened. It has been damaged, and it was further damaged during the second quake. So a lot of people that were inside during the first quake, too frightened to sleep inside. They are now in a tented city around the back of the sports hall. 16,000 people also in a stadium down the road. They're in dorms from the local sports halls and local schools as well. We'll tell you more about that too. Come this way. I'm going to join Siobhan in just a second. In fact, Siobhan, tell me about this building that's ahead of us here. Siobhan, good morning.
Morning. So yeah, you can see the buildings here. Yeah, these are all residential buildings, and it's interesting because it brings up one of the points that lots of people have been talking to us about, and that's why, how come some of these buildings have totally crumbled and then others are still standing up? But you can see there, that's clearly a couch we can see the back of, into people's bedrooms as well. Others you go past, the whole side is missing. And then we drove through the city yesterday and every single building in some streets are totally destroyed.
Talk to me about what's going on here. This is obviously water aid that is this is mostly, we have to say, is from the Turkish government at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, so lots of aid coming in here. This is bottles of water I've seen on buses here as well, blankets.
Yeah, we just talked about that. Yeah.
Food coming in. Water obviously really important because the city has lost its water supply across almost all of it. But of course, it's not just Turkey that's providing this aid. They are also looking to international partners, and they've actually published a list of people who have sent search and rescue teams. So we can have a look at the list now, but Azerbaijan actually has sent the most personnel. They've sent 725, and obviously they're an earthquake prone nation as well, so lots of expertise there. The US has offered a rescue team of 159. They've also offered $85 million of humanitarian aid, and of course we already know that the UK have sent their 77 strong rescue team. They've also sent thermal blankets, and they're looking at setting up field hospitals.
Yeah, and we also believe actually that the Brits are sending that field hospital that's going to be 24/7. It's going to have an operating theatre, and it's going to be able to treat other people as well. But that's been replicated by lots of other countries.
Yes, so here in this city we know that the French are trying to set up a field hospital as well.
Okay, when the first earthquake struck in the early hours of Monday, many people were inside their homes sleeping. Those homes, sometimes in huge apartment blocks, as we saw, now literally reduced to rubble. In the coming days and weeks, there will inevitably be questions about how this amount of death and destruction was possible. So why didn't they know the risks?
So obviously, the first thing we have to say is this is one of the worst earthquakes here in a century, one of the worst internationally in a decade. So it was huge. But also, we have been looking at information surrounding earthquakes, and we can have a look at a map, and this is the earthquake zone. And when you have a look on that map, you can see the triangles. Now, they actually show a network which measures ground movement, and Sky News understands that in some areas, the movement from the quake exceeded the levels in Turkey's design code.
Right.
So basically, they couldn't prepare for this level. It actually reached the upper limits of what would have been expected in every 2,500 years. And then we can show you another slide, and this is focusing on Gaziantep, which we know, of course, was the epicenter, and it looks at some of the most vulnerable neighborhoods there. And on that graphic, you can see the darkest color. Now, that's predicting it's in the most vulnerable areas there, and it's predicting that over half of the buildings would suffer. But this was based on a quake which was 10 times less powerful than the one that struck. So you can imagine just how much more damage was done.
Yeah, I was chatting, you were with me actually yesterday when we saw that apartment block that had literally collapsed like a house of cards. Some 8 stories high, many hundreds of people thought to have died. And we were just about to go to air at 9 o'clock in the morning when this lady, absolutely furious about what had happened with that building, stopped to talk to us.
We gave all of our money in a bag to the builder of the building, and we get our homes, nothing left. We need food, we need water, we need shelter. The children need food.
Kendi imkanlarımızla yapıyoruz yani. Kendi imkanlarımızla
We
yapıyoruz.
did everything by our own, nobody helped us.
That was a lady that I was speaking to yesterday. She was telling me that literally they've been giving the builder bags of money, and they'd taken out a central column, hadn't they, Siobhan? And as a result, the building collapsed. You were talking to lots of other people.
Yes, so some of the people that we met who were waiting to see if their relatives were going to be found alive in that building, some of them had already had the news that they hadn't survived, and they invited us to watch some of the funerals that were taking place, and many of the people that we met at those funerals were furious about the buildings and the weakness in the buildings. They said that their lives have been put at risk. One person told me he believed this was essentially murder because of not enough work being done.
Just to explain what's going on, obviously vehicles are moving around all the time here. We are trying to bring you a flavour of what's happening while trying to stay out of the way. They are doing essential work here, 20,000 people being helped. This is the hub for this area of Adiyaman. Sorry, go on.
And you can see it's so frenetic because obviously so much aid is needed. That's why they're coming in and out like this, because it is desperate, and we know that people here have said that they didn't get much support from outside for 2 days. Now, as I was saying, I went to witness some of these funerals, and you can have a listen now to what some of the people here were telling me.
Turkey is burying its dead. Loved ones crushed while they slept. Children, parents, partners. The loss is profound. This woman's daughter is among those killed. When her body was found, she had her baby in her arms. The pain is too much. I wish I died and my children had lived, she says. Grief echoes around Adiyaman. The earthquake totaled much of the city, but people say it took 2 days for help to arrive. By which time, the voices below the rubble had fallen silent. So the body bags keep arriving, 50 here in an hour, and with them the anger mounts. This woman curses the president. She says she hears her nephew begging for help from the wreckage, help that never came. But others are still waiting for news. When this apartment collapsed, homes became tombs. As rescuers search for the 100 still missing, distraught relatives watch on. The only thing we have is hope, Mahmoud tells me. So we wait to the end. 6 of his family are buried here. He has little else to lose.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out, and this is a pattern which is repeated tens of times in this city, thousands of times across Turkey.
For now, they will mourn their dead. But with each new coffin, the same question. If help had come sooner, could this life have been saved?
So we just want to move back to where we can see the food aid position here, because we do have a couple of people that have volunteered to talk to us. So wandering with Siobhan. Siobhan, just as we wait to speak to these people, talk to me about, just remind me what aid has come in so far and what we're expecting.
So you can see here lots of aid coming in. There's here stuff that's come from the government, but also we've seen lots of aid coming in to the city from various volunteers. Different city groups have driven to areas that are in need, for example. So we can see bread here, but also there's the international aid that's been going on as well. So Azerbaijan, we were talking about, they are sending the most personnel, more than 700 from there. The US is donating more than 85 million in humanitarian aid. We've got the UK, of course, which have sent those 77 strong team, which one of our colleagues, Alex Crawford, filmed with as well.
Indeed. So which of these gentlemen, who is it that wants to speak to us? Who would like to talk to us? Hello, sir. Hello. So, tell me how you've come here and what you are doing.
Biz Diyarbakır'dan geldik gönüllü olarak. İlk gün Diyarbakır'daki enkazda çalıştık. Sonra orada ekiplerin olduğunu görünce, Adiyaman'ın çok kötü halde olduğunu görünce buraya geldik. Ama daha sonra
Please tell me
burada
what he's saying.
They are coming from Diyarbakır. They worked in the first days in Diyarbakır's earthquake area by the buildings, by the ruggles. And then afterwards they heard that Adiyaman is much worse than Diyarbakır. So they voluntarily come up here.
And what are they doing here?
Burada ne yapıyorsunuz?
burada ilk gün enkazda çalıştık yardımcı olarak. Sonrasında buraya depoya geldik. Çadır kentlerde çadırların kurulması, çadırların ihtiyaçlarının, sobaların dağıtılması. Şu an gelen yardımları indirip onları insanlara dağıtıyoruz.
On the first day, we worked on the ground with the ruggles, but then here we are trying to build up tents. There are many volunteer donations coming up to this location. We are trying to organize and give support to the people who came here.
Lots of aid coming now. Is it enough?
Şu anda buraya çok fazla yardım geliyor. Siz yeterli olduğunu düşünüyor musunuz? Ama gelmeye de devam ediyor bildiğimiz kadarıyla.
Şu an birçok yardım geliyor. Bir ilk gün çadır sıkıntısı vardı. Şu an çadırlarda gelecek bilgisi geldi. Ama giysi, battaniye, yiyecek onlar çoğunlukla evet. Çok fazla geliyor.
We only had the first day we had some tents.
Çadır gelecek amca. Bugün ya da yarın bekliyoruz.
But the support, the coming aid, foods, clothes,
aslında boş çadırlar var ama
etc. is now enough and they are coming and coming.
And how long does he plan to stay here?
Ne kadar daha kalmayı planlıyorsunuz?
Biz öğretmeniz 20'sine kadar okullar tatil. Hani burada kalabildiğimiz kadar kalıp hani insanlara yük olmadan insanlara yardımcı olmaya çalışıyoruz.
We are all teachers, he said. And the schools will be open at the 20th of February. Until then, we will stay here and help people.
What would you like to say to people who are watching us around the world this morning?
Dünyada bu yayını, sizin bu söylediklerinizi izleyen insanlara ne söylemek istersiniz?
Şunu söylemek isteriz. Şimdi çadır var ama insanların evleri yapılana kadar insanların muhtemelen ciddi bir nakit paraya ihtiyaçları olacak. Hani nakit para gönderebilirler çünkü o insanlar yeniden hayatlarını kuracaklar. Yani söyleyebileceğimiz tek şey bu dayanışma. Hani birbirimizden
What did he say?
No,
We're still live. What did he say?
He says to all the people watching from the world, all of these people in Adiyaman, all in Turkey, lost their homes. So they will need money, they will need support. We need solidarity, he says. The last words.
Thank you for your help here. Thank you very much indeed. So the appeal has obviously in full swing here, but of course Daniel Craig, you may have noticed, is also launching an appeal for more aid from not only the UK but from right around the world.
As the attempts to save more people under the rubble continue, the big challenge ahead is to help the millions who have survived it. The humanitarian situation is expected to get worse in the coming days. Countless injured need vital medicine or hospital care, and those now homeless face the freezing winter without any shelter, food or clean water. Whatever you can manage, every penny will make a difference. So please, donate now. Their trauma cannot be undone, but we can and we must help.
And a reminder that you can watch a special documentary, Disaster Zone, the Turkey-Syria earthquake, 9:30 tonight here on Sky News. We will obviously go inside, show you what's happening here, show you the tents where people are living, and also talk to other people around the site in the coming minutes and hours. Before that, let's move on to other news for you now. And Labour has held on to its seat in West Lancashire after a by-election victory which saw Ashley Dalton become the country's newest MP. Ms Dalton secured a majority of 8,326 over her Conservative rival, with a 10.5% swing from the Tories to Labour.
I think what we've seen tonight is that they're definitely losing votes in the country, and they no longer have that mandate to govern, and Rishi Sunak doesn't have a mandate to lead. So if this government wants to limp on without a proper democratic mandate and push things through Parliament, maybe they'll do that. But I think the message that has come tonight from the British people is that time is up for this Conservative government, and we do need a general election.
It's been exactly 2 weeks since the disappearance of Nicola Burley, the lady in Lancashire, she went missing while walking her dog along the river in St Michael's-on-Wyre in Lancashire after dropping off her 2 children at school. After extensive searches, her whereabouts remain a mystery. Police believe that she fell into the River Wyre. They've now moved their search to the coastline. Teams are scouring the coastline 10 miles downstream from where she was last spotted. And in other news, the former Culture Secretary, Nadine Dorries, of course, we're hearing news about her this morning, and that is that she has decided not to stand at the next general election. Ms Dorries has been MP for Mid-Bedfordshire since 2005, and in recent years has earned a reputation as one of the most loyal supporters of the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson. Ambulance workers, including call handlers, are walking out across 5 regions in England today. The workers, who are all members of Unison, are demanding better pay and conditions. Former US Vice President Mike Pence has been summoned to testify in a criminal case. It's an investigation against the former President Donald Trump. The subpoena was served on Mr Pence in relation to Mr Trump's bid to overturn his 2020 presidential election defeat. Now, it's been 4 days since the earthquake struck in the early hours of Monday morning here in southeastern Turkey. And with every passing hour, hopes fade of finding anyone alive. But we have witnessed rare moments when people are lifted from the rubble. In one case, we saw a woman saved whose family had started to prepare her burial plot. Our international correspondent John Sparks has the latest for us now from Maraş, the epicentre of the earthquake, and a warning. His images do contain some moving images of people being removed from the rubble.
The air is soaked in dust and smoke. The city marked with concrete mounds. But in this apocalyptic state, there is evidence of life. Human beings still breathing in the rubble. At the Abra apartment block, we saw an Israeli rescue team exploring the remains. One of the first international groups to reach Kahramanmaraş. And they had made a life-saving discovery. A young woman had been rescued from the gloom. Her name, Zeynep Chivi. She was fast asleep when the earthquake struck, dressed in polka-dot pajamas, and we could see her shivering and crying after her 3-day ordeal. We're here, don't be afraid, said a paramedic. Her younger sister, Elif, followed right behind. The 20-year-old was also shivering. But the rescuers were elated, and the family overjoyed, praying for a miracle they'd been delivered to.
Thank you very much, thank you very much.
His name is Burak, and he told us he's the girl's cousin.
Did you think that you had lost her, or did you still have hope in your heart?
We thought they were dead. We'd prepared the burial plot. The Israelis said the sisters' survival owed much to chance, some information from an earlier success.
We pulled out a man named Hussein. He was 65 years old. And he told us that he heard voices. And we penetrated the additional room and we didn't find anyone. But we decided to return to this building again. Maybe he was right. So it was not so close, but we found 2 women here.
We've just come around the corner. It's the same building, but the contrast could not be any greater. These are local people. They are using crowbars and spades to try and get access to the building. They want to do the same thing. They're trying to save people's lives. They're trying to retrieve bodies, but it is going to take them much, much longer to do it.
They can smell, and in some cases, see the bodies, but it doesn't mean they can get them out.
What is happening here?
We can smell a body here, says this volunteer. The body is lying on a bed, so we're trying to dislodge it. The victims make an undignified trip to a sports stadium for identification. Some go by hand, others in diggers, while the injured go to local hospitals like this one, which has turned its reception into a giant ward. Here we met a relative of Zeyap and Elif, and we asked him how they were doing.
Normal.
No injuries, said cousin Kasim Chivit, but they're bruised and cold, and they're trying to revive them. Specialists and supplies have begun to arrive here, but they can't meet the demand in this traumatized city. John Sparks, Sky News in Kahramanmaraş.
John Sparks reporting there. Meantime, we are in Adiyaman, and this is the latest delivery of clothes donated by the Turkish people. It's collated and then brought here to this rescue centre, which is a former sports hall made into a makeshift aid centre for now. There's food, there's water, there's protection against the elements, but what a lot of these people need are clothes. When the earthquake struck in the early hours of the morning, they literally ran out of their homes with the clothes they were standing up in. I saw an elderly lady just a few moments ago trying on a pair of shoes. She didn't have anything else, and they quite clearly were not shoes that would fit her comfortably, but she was just thankful for the chance to have her feet protected from the cold floor. And she is actually staying in, I'm right in saying she's staying in the sports centre at the moment. All of them, up to about 20,000 people here at the moment. They are hoping to be able to find better accommodation in the coming days and weeks. We'll speak to a family like that in just a second. As we pan round here, please, if we may, Nathan, and look at the piles of aid and support. This little one here, managing to smile despite calling for his mummy. I'm sure she's not far away. And other gentlemen here sorting out the sort of products that they will need going into the next few weeks. There's a lot of sanitary products we've seen. There's a lot of towels coming through as well. Just things to be able to wash themselves. People, as I said, if you look at the buildings behind, they literally fled from these buildings. They describe themselves as lucky ones because they did escape with their lives. The latest death toll, up to 21,000, both here in southeastern Turkey, also in Syria as well, and that number will undoubtedly rise still further. Just watching the children's blanket as we go by. I want to chat to Saud. Here is Saud with his family. Hello, Saud. Hello. Tell me their story.
Bize hikayenizi anlatır mısınız? Eviniz ne durumda? Ne
Evimiz
yaşadınız?
hiç hasarları var. Sabah 4:20'de zaten deprem oldu. Herkes biliyor. O işte çok şükür ki iyi tarafı ev yıkılmadan dışarıya kaçabildik.
We could escape from our house. The house is not so well, but it's okay. It's still standing on his feet, he says. But it was terrible, the earthquake during the night.
İşte o dışarı kaçtık, yağmur bayağı yağıyordu.
Fırtınadaydı çocuklarımız fırtınada yağmurun önüne kendini attılar.
Ağlama.
Arabamız.
Ağlama.
My children were in the rain during the night. It was cold and wet, and they were very scared of the earthquake.
Ondan sonra işte arabalarla
Komşular
geldik
sağ olsun
buraya.
arabaları alıp
Our
gettiler.
neighbors helped us. They put us into cars and bring
Acımız
us here
çok
to
büyük.
the city center. Our grief is
Kaybımız
too
çok.
much. We lost many people when
Enkaz
many
altında
friends.
canlı insanlar bekleyen çok da.
There are still many
Bekliyor
people here in
herkes.
Adiyaman under the
Çok
rubble.
üzgün.
I'm very sorry.
Bir yaşadığımızı biz biliriz. Çektiklerim.
Kaç çocuğunuz var?
3 tane.
They have 3 children. Çocuklar nasıl idare ediyorlar? İdare edebiliyorlar mı? Ne hissediyorlar? Ne diyorlar?
Çocuklar evini istiyor, düzenli istiyor. Çocuklar bir banyo yapma
my
imkanı
children
yok. Çocuklar
wants to go back home, have a bath,
okulunu istiyor.
to go to his school
Öğretmenlerini
again.
özlemiş,
I miss my
arkadaşlarını özlemiş.
teacher, my boy said. They want
Çok
to stay
üzgünler.
at home. They want only see the house again.
How can my viewers help her?
İzleyicilerimiz nasıl yardımcı olabilirler? Ne istersiniz bu yayını izleyen insanlardan?
Zaten genelde sağ olsun her birçok ülkeden yardım geldi. Arama kurtarma geldi, gıda, yiyecek her şey geldi çok şükür.
God bless all the
Şu
foreign
anda
people who send support and help and aid. I know from many countries aid is coming towards Turkey, so we are very
Hayvanlarımız
thankful.
içeride
şu anda
ölüyor, arabamız yok. Gidip
We have
onlara
lost our
bir
animals,
şey veremiyoruz,
she's saying.
ölüyorlar.
We can't go back to our animals to feed them.
What do they plan to do next?
Adiyaman'ın %90'ı zaten evler kullanılmaz halde.
90% of this city of Adiyaman is gone. The houses,
Herkes
we cannot
dışarıda.
use the houses.
Çok
Everybody
üzgün.
is out on the streets, she says.
Yani Allah herkesin
Ne
yardımcısı.
yapmayı planlıyorsunuz önümüzdeki günlerde?
hiçbir şey bilmiyoruz, ne yapacağımızı
Hükümet ne
bilmiyoruz.
yapacaksa ona göre hareket
We really
edeceğiz.
don't know what's going to happen to us and to all of the people. We'll just wait what the government will say.
What's the little boy called?
Samet.
Samed. And how old is Samed?
Kaç yaşındasın Samet? 7.
7.
Birinci
Does he
sınıf
want to
okula
say
gidiyor.
hello to everybody at home? I can help him do that.
Merhaba demek ister misin dünyadaki herkese?
Here we go.
Merhaba.
Merhaba.
Merhaba.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Teşekkür ederim.
Thanks a lot. Continuing coverage here on Sky. Do stay tuned. Hello again, welcome back to Adiyaman. Siobhan is still with me. Siobhan, that was an incredibly emotional interview that we just did with that family. My goodness me. We can see that Hello Stoke food arriving all the time. I think that's a kebab, is it?
Yes, a kebab, and people, also having tea here, just trying to make them as comfortable as possible, because, as you said in your interview that you just did, it's so difficult for people, particularly when they've been displaced. They're living, in tents, in a gym, and they can go back and see the damage that's happened to their homes. And I think we often see these huge numbers, 21,000 have died, millions displaced, but it's until you hear those personal stories that it really brings it home to you, what is happening to people on an individual level.
Yeah, indeed. So let's bring in Ünal Çevakos, who is the former Turkish ambassador to the UK, now a member of the opposition, an MP. Hello, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. What do you make of the government's response so far? It's certainly ramped up over the last couple of days.
Well, right from the outset, all the civil society organizations, the municipalities and the government officials tried to reach out to the earthquake region. And in some cases, of course, it has been a little bit delayed because the earthquake has affected a very wide area, and it is about 500 kilometers long, and it has affected 10 provinces. So it was not possible to reach out everywhere at the same moment. But after the second day, now it's getting more organized. I can see that the Sky News is reaching out to Kahramanmaraş and Adiyaman. I have also noticed that the British International Search and Rescue Team, right from the beginning, has tried to reach out to the victims and to the people who are under the rubble. A team of 77 people, search and rescuers from the United Kingdom, have arrived in Turkey. I think it was on Tuesday. They arrived in Antep, and then they were distributed to several cities in the region, starting from Hatay, from Antep to Adiyaman, and also to Kahramanmaraş. The government is now trying to organize all the assistance, all the international aid coming from abroad, but also from within the country. But now it has been almost 5 days now after the earthquake. I think the sustainability of the survivors is becoming more and more important because the winter conditions is becoming severe.
Coming to you in a second. We've also, a lot of my colleagues have witnessed looting. There's been some big challenges, people struggling, as you said, to get food and water. All that is improving now. What more needs to be done, both by the Turkish authorities and also the international community?
We have heard about the looting attempts, but these are taken under control, and people are, of course, being arrested if they are caught in a looting event. And the security personnel is trying to prevent all kinds of looting activities. I think from now on, the international aid should not focus on food or any kind of other issues, but the sustainability of the living conditions there. The living conditions are terrible because there's no natural gas, there's no water, no electricity, and the sewage system has been destroyed in Adiyaman, in several other cities, Marash, of course, and Hatay. I think portable toilets and all kinds of other field hospital availabilities would be very helpful. And I'm afraid there will be a very huge relocation of the people who have survived after the earthquake. And this has already started. I'm told that some 70,000 people have already been relocated. I think these people, the survivors, are going to be distributed to the other cities in the country. And many people, of course, will be willingly hosting them in their houses.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. They're just so kind, these people. They have very little, and yet they still hand out soup and food for us. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. That's kind. Thank you. I will take it for him later. Thank you. Thank you. Want to bring in John Murray, Security Manager, Relief International. Hello to you, John. There have been a lot of challenges for people here. They are struggling, as we've been saying, it's getting better now, but they have been struggling without food, water and basic human requirements, which has led to some levels of crime and looting here. How do the authorities start to deal with that gently but persuasively?
Hi, thanks, Kate.
Hello, John.
So the areas where we're operating are in southern Turkey and in northern Syria. For us, we haven't seen any looting observed at any of our facilities or the area where we operate. I'm aware that it's been happening, but I've seen nothing but compassion and cooperation from people towards those the people that have been displaced.
Yeah. John, talk to me about the fact that you were in Gaziantep when the earthquake hit. Can you tell us what you were doing there at the time?
Hi, Kay. I was in Gaziantep in order to coordinate with some of our partners. We partner with a number of medical-focused NGOs. So I was there for what was supposed to be a week-long visit of training and coordination. And I was in Gaziantep on Monday morning when the quake hit. So I was fortunate. The building that I was in, it suffered minor structural damage, but it was intact. I moved out of the building into the street, and I linked up with my other colleagues to establish whether they were okay and to let our headquarters know. But a lot of other people were in a lot more dire situations than I was. Like we've had, unfortunately, we've had a number of staff members who were killed in the quake. So we've lost 3. We have 1 staff member unaccounted for. And then other people have been displaced from buildings that were actually collapsing around.
How and when did you manage to connect up with your team workers?
Well, I was fortunate enough to have a couple of power bank and my phone charge. So I moved out into the snow. The weather was dismal. It was around 0 degrees. It was snowing, and I communicated with those guys on WhatsApp. It was a bit of a challenge because communications and power was out in a number of locations. So it did take us some time to get in touch with all of our staff.
OK, we will leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. You can see these gentlemen now handing out hot cups of tea. It really is bitterly cold here. It's so welcome for the very many thousands of people that are gathering here in the centre of Adiyaman with literally nowhere else to go at this stage. International aid is coming in now. It's slower, obviously, than that has been provided by the Turkish authorities, but it's coming. They need more. Just listen to Daniel Craig.
As the attempts to save more people under the rubble continue, the big challenge ahead is to help the millions who have survived it. The humanitarian situation is expected to get worse in the coming days. Countless injured need vital medicine or hospital care, and those now homeless face the freezing winter without any shelter, food or clean water. Whatever you can manage, every penny will make a difference. So please, donate now. Their trauma cannot be undone, but we can and we must help.
Rude in this culture to say no, and I have to say, it's very well received. It's bitterly cold here. Back at home, we've narrowly avoided recession again by that much. Here's the Chancellor.
Well, the fact that we have avoided recession, in fact, we're the fastest growing major country last year, shows there is underlying resilience in the UK economy. But we are not out of the woods. Inflation is still much too high. That is causing pain for families up and down the country, which is why we need to stick to our plan to halve inflation. If we do that and play to our strengths in science and technology, we really can be one of the most prosperous countries in Europe.
Well, let's get more from Brixton Market, should we? Ashna standing by for us. What's the reaction there this morning?
To be honest, market traders say it is no surprise. Yes, the economy has flatlined, but for many people, the primary issue remains, as the Chancellor mentioned just there, high inflation and the fact that prices are rising infinitely and across the board. I've spoken to a market trader who's been trading here for 23 years. This is the market that's been here since the 1880s. He's not quite been here as long, but in 23 years, he said he's never seen it as bad as it is now. For example, he's telling his customers to go and buy their vegetables elsewhere. This is a market trader that sells fruit and vegetables. To give us an example, he said, look, yellow bell peppers, I used to buy them for £8 to £9 a box, and now they're £22. With things like eggs, they used to be £4.50 for a dozen, and now that's gone up to £8. These are prices these traders are really having to balance whether they're going to pass on that extra cost to the consumer, who they know are spending their money differently. So you've got cash-strapped consumers who haven't yet entered this market, but already we're talking about a Friday. It's usually a busy day for them, and even at the weekends, they're not quite hitting that mark. When it comes to other produce that they're suffering with, it's not only eggs and peppers, but also vegetables in general. I asked one of the traders why that might be. He blamed transport costs, among many other things, but as the Chancellor said, not out of the woods yet.
OK, for now, Sajid, thank you. Ashna, forgive me. Looking behind me, this is bottled water that is being sent in by the authority. Puts everything in perspective, doesn't it, really? There is no water supply here in this city at the moment. 620,000 people live here. 75% or thereabouts of the city has been badly damaged. The other 25% no longer exists. Let's talk about the economy in the UK and bring in Jagit Chadha, Director of the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on the programme this morning. Are these the sort of figures that you were expecting?
First, I just want to say these are absolutely heart-rending scenes from Turkey, and all our thoughts are with the Turkish and Syrian people at this terrible time. It's very good of you to broadcast from out there and bring this devastation more clearly into our homes. So, in comparison with the UK economy, we're not in anything like that kind of trouble, but the economy is behaving much as we expected. Flatline, so no growth in the last quarter of last year. We now think there'll be a small contraction in the first quarter of this year of about minus 0.2%. These numbers are very choppy. The things that affected activity in the last quarter of last year is that services were down, particularly public-facing services. There seemed to be some impact from the strikes. There were still supply chain issues, and we hadn't really got over the effects of the mini-budget, which had broiled mortgage and credit markets, all of which were providing a little bit of downward momentum that will probably take us into the first quarter of this year. And over the course of the rest of this year, we see not a recession, which means a contraction, a consistent contraction across a large number of sectors, but probably the economy not doing very much, so probably slightly above the zero line, but in a way that doesn't really help all those people we're just hearing about from Brixton and other places where people are not going to feel materially better off than they did last year, and therefore are going to feel much worse off than they anticipated or they did in the recent past. These are not very good times for the British economy.
Why is the British economy doing so much worse than other countries, not only in Europe, but even Russia is going to do better, apparently, with growth than the UK economy this year?
Yeah, well, I think the Russian economy and state has its own issues, and I'd rather be living in a democracy than there, I've got to say. Clearly, the kind of countries that are able to export energy, oil and gas at a time when energy, oil, gas prices have shot up so much will be doing very well, and we see that across the board. The kind of countries that have to import it on the margin are materially poorer. Which imagine that a large part of our household basket of expenditure and a large amount of firms' expenditure is explained by energy prices. So whether we're buying fruit, which has to be transported here, or indeed directly buying energy, all those prices have gone up. So adjusting for that impact, we're materially poorer. And the UK has suffered a larger increase in some of these energy prices, and therefore it means that overall we're poorer. But I want to add to that ongoing supply chain issues, frictions in trade that have materially degraded since the Brexit referendum. It's not something we've sorted. That has meant that our supply constraints have bit harder than they have in many other countries. And when we add these things up, as well as the impact of COVID in an economy that was very much focused on recreation, hospitality and restaurant work that hasn't recovered, our GDP hasn't recovered the pre-COVID level even, we begin to build a picture of why the British economy is suffering more than others. It's not something anyone takes joy in explaining to people, but it's something that many, many households are suffering from in a rather distressing manner.
OK, thank you very much indeed for explaining that to us here on the programme this morning. Thank you. Meantime, back here in southeastern Turkey, Siobhan, back with me. This is another one of the soup stations that's been set up.
Yes, so you can see in the white pots here, we've got rice here, and then at the back it's like tomato broth, because obviously it's really, really cold, -3 overnight. So things to keep people warm, but also to fill them up as much as they can.
Yeah. Let's have another wander around the site, if we may. There's a lot of big lorries here, so we're being very careful with Nathan as we walk and talk. A lot of water. This is, again, at the moment from the Turkish government.
Yeah, and it's really important that this water comes through, because we've been told that most of the water supply in the city has gone. Obviously, clean drinking water is vital in disaster zones, because we don't want to have any diseases adding to the problems, particularly when there are, we know, dead bodies still on the streets trapped under the rubble. So they're trying to keep everything clean here. We've got some milk as well.
This is for
people.
the little ones,
yeah.
look.
Just to try and also bring a little bit of comfort if you have a familiar product when you've been pushed out of your home.
Yeah, indeed so. Inside the building, there are a lot of people still sheltering. They've been sleeping there for some time. A lot of others, though, there's a tented city around the other side, isn't there? They don't want to be inside this building because they were inside when the second quake hit and there was damage to the building.
Yeah, and if you look at the buildings around us as well, you can see just how much damage has happened. And I think people feel that they don't know which buildings are safe, because it's hit and miss around the city. Some of them are still standing, some have totally collapsed, and we've seen cracks in the gym as well. People worried if they stay inside, you know, some people got out of the first quake but then stayed inside for the second and didn't survive, so they're worried about being inside, understandably, and so they feel safer in tents.
Yeah, OK, this water supply arriving all the time. Let's just continue up this way a little bit, Nathan, if we may. As I said, we will wander around to the tented city a little bit later on. Aid is arriving now from right around the world, including the UK.
Yes, 77 teams from the UK, they're on the ground. We've seen them already working, trying to carry out rescues, trying to pull people out of the rubble. We know that the US is sending $85 million worth of humanitarian aid, help from Azerbaijan. In this city, we know that the French are trying to set up a field hospital. We know the British are trying to set up field hospitals as well. So lots of aid is starting to come through. I think some people, though, are concerned that it took too long to get here.
Yeah. So this is the overview of what's happening here. Another lorry has arrived with more water that needs to be unloaded and given to the people here in Adiyaman. Some 20,000 people being helped at the moment. It is a city of 630,000. You can see from the maths what else needs to be done. Stay tuned, Noah.